I got my knee
All
jammed
right.
under my desk.
Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we are joined by a legend himself, George Mitrovic, a British researcher and explorer. Australian.
Yeah, I'm in near Sydney.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. I don't mind being insulted once, but don't do it twice.
I'm so sorry. Australian.
Yes. Australia started off as prisoners of Mother England.
Yes, it did.
Sorry.
No, we were a lovely open-air prison camp once. See, even we can do well.
Well, today we're talking to George Mitrovic, Australian researcher and author. Published over 80 books regarding Bigfoot, giants, and other such oddities and paranormal objects of interest. And today we get to spend an hour talking to him about all of these fascinations. So strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. George, you're so gracious. After I insulted you so heartily, I appreciate you sticking around.
No, shit happens.
Yeah, that's for sure.
A lot of people.
You're in Sydney. That explains the humongous time difference. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So So now I understand why it's so early. I apologize.
Discuss it with Liam. I told him before.
You're a true professional, sir, and I appreciate it in every sense. All right. How did you get involved in all of this research? Let's start there.
Oh, God. That was the focus of an interview a few weeks ago that lasted 3 hours. Most of mine usually last 2 hours to 3 hours, so I've got to be really quick. I was a nerd. A little nerd. Growing up in a country town, much like any other country town in the middle of nowhere, and this one was in Australia in the 1950s. There were people still living with dirt floors. There were kids still coming to school with no shoes and snail trails. It was the 1950s, a very conservative Puritan Australia. Very stoic, they used to say. You don't show emotions, you don't do anything, you don't think outside of the square. And my earliest memory is of composing an opera on the piano, or as my brother and sister said, donging on the piano, wailing, about the sinking of Abersimbel and the High Aswan Dam. It's not a normal thing for a 7-year-old to sing about. And then my parents fed me I bought a lot of books. They fed me the money because I was a voracious appetite for books and for knowledge. And when I was about 9, I read the Allende Letters by Morris K. Jessup about the Philadelphia experiment. Once again, strange reading for a kid of 9. But I've got an IQ of 205, so it just wanted information. I already had a library on archaeology. I'd already read Leonard Cottrell's Valley of the Kings and the entire series of his books by the time I was 6. I already knew paleontology, geology, sciences. A very mathematical person, though mathematically I'm almost inept. Ask my wife. I can't balance a budget if I tried. And then I found books by authors like Shrew Thomas, who wrote about aliens and gods from the sky. And that was years before Von Däniken. These were French authors. And then I met Ivan Sanderson's work, the great anthropologist and biologist who set up the study of cryptozoology. This is all around the same time. I'm 9 or 10. And I'm exploring this wonderful new unknown world that no one wants to talk about, of strange creatures. As I said, Ivan T. Sanderson and Bernard Heuvelmans, who wrote In the Wake of the Sea Serpent in the early 50s. They founded cryptozoology. Without them, cryptozoology would not even be a word.
Right.
They were talking about creatures with giant wings that come swooping down from the sky, and our friend wandering around in the woods. And this sponge just went, I want more. And I was a relatively quiet kid. I wasn't very mobile. I'd had a serious car accident when I was about nearly 2, which I was supposed to be a vegetable. I'm not sure if I still am.
It's been pretty lively so far.
I'm always lively now. I'm getting old enough to be lively. I don't believe in specialization. To me, specialization, micromanagement, micro insight is a horrendous curse. It focuses your insight onto one thing only, and then you start dividing that up. So you might start with that, but you'll end up with that. And even it will disappear as your own intellect keeps taking over to reduce the parameters of what you're studying. I don't want my study to create the results. I want the data with a macro view, like all of these behind me. Data in macro view. They're all in either chronological order or geological order, geographical order, or both. I'm probably slightly Aspergerish. I like things in order. I like things with dates. I like to say, what the hell happened in 1842 in here? So I live here. I want to find out. I'm going to go through the history of my county. You can do that with my books. And then you see, I gather data from everywhere, every authority, not just each one. Each single author has their own axe to grind, their own viewpoint to share, their own promulgation to produce, their own bias, consciously or unconsciously. I want the data to be the result. And the total data realization to be the main thing. People say, yeah, how many big feet are there? How many Bigfoot sightings have been? They don't exist. All of the above. My books, I think it's 8 volumes on Bigfoot for North America alone, and I include Canada as North America.
Sure, why not?
Because it's the same bloody continent.
Right.
It's 2,400 pages in 8 volumes.
That's incredible.
That is the biggest amassing of data on Bigfoot from first one ever seen to the multitudes now. Is that from reporting? Is that from familiarity? Is that from publicizing? Is that from better media? Is that from faster media, faster communications? Greater use of imagination, greater schizoid visioning. Who knows? So let's look at constants, time, space. That's what I work with in everything I do. Time and space is a very strange thing. For many, many years, and I'm talking many years, I kept amassing databases on archaeology and you name it. And strange phenomena. UFOs. What the F are they?
Yeah.
Where do they come from? What do they do? Yes, Bigfoot. Who is he? What does he want? In your local steppe, your local field, your local forest, your local backyard, depending on the suburb, depending on the place, depending on the observer. The observer is the only wild card. It's still not a constant.
Yeah.
The object observed is still a wild card. It's not a constant. Patterns of observation are a constant. People can't have simultaneous mass hallucinations on a grand scale. We're not that organised. No one can organise this that well. And considering that my data starts from early days, the latest series of books I'm working on, what will it be? It's 7,000 pages. That'll be 24 volumes, starting 1600, finishing 1999. I'm working on it at the moment, but I'm having a break because I want to write up my theory I've been working on all my life into a book, which I get interviewed on, and I noticed the other day, I've never actually written it down anywhere. And I thought, it's time I do it. I'm getting a bit long in the tooth. It's my birthday today.
Well, happy birthday.
And humans normally only live to 38 in the wild, and I'm getting closer to double of that. And if I better write this thing down, that's the other reason I wrote everything else down and amassed everything else down. Because if I don't write this down, and other researchers don't write this down, and other discoverers and explorers don't write things down, we end up with nothing. We don't have a posterity for the future. You know, I might not be here in a few years, but in some thrift shop somewhere in downtown, wherever, in the backwoods of Tennessee, somebody's going to pick up a book of mine and say, Christ, he was crazy. But there's something to it. It's easy to read. I don't write for intellectuals. Why? I can spend the rest of my life writing a book about the fishhooks on one side of an island in the Pacific with a reading audience of the other author who wrote about the other fishhooks on the other side of the island. It generated a massive field of research for two people and to gain tenure in what I call the oligarchic hegemony, which means if you're not part of our club with our knowledge stream that we wish to promote and endorse, you're not being employed by us, you're not being published by us, you're not being told about by us. My interviews tend to ramble a bit.
Well, you said a lot of great things there, and I want to touch on some of them. One of them was time and space and accumulating data points. And you also mentioned patterns. And so what are some of the patterns that you've, oh, there we go. That looks like a graphic data point. So what are some of the patterns that you notice about the behavior of observers and the observed, in this case, Bigfoot? You know, obviously it can't possibly be that everyone's looking at the same Bigfoot. There's got to be multiple of these entities out there, right?
There's
So
multiples of everything.
As far as patterns.
Okay. Well, this thing. Oh, God, I hate it when it reverses. That's North America. 1800 to 1977. Each line is latitude. Every point on it is a data point. And my data points have to be triple independent witnessed or leave hard evident phenomena. Not just, I saw a light in the sky and it went past and, you know, who the hell wants to read about that? It could be a comet, meteor, or a thing in their eye.
Mm-hmm.
It could even be an electromagnetic response to an electromagnetic field that will trigger the same hallucinations as schizophrenia, which is influenced by electromagnetism in the brain.
Okay.
Got to allow for things. So 3 separate published sources, or one with very, very good physical evidence.
Right.
As we travel down here, that line there is the 1897 airship flap. What I found amazing, collating data over the years, is they all fall on sine waves. Sine wave is always repetitive because it's an oscillation.
Right.
It's not a straight line. It doesn't have great leaps and bounds. It is an oscillation. It is a series of oscillations intersecting, which is a pretty random sort of discovery. I started a research on this in 72, 71, but I think I'd been doing it since I first woke up in the morning one day when I was still a child, when I started amassing all this data and this thing started observing. So
it sounds like one of the things that you've observed, sine waves are periodic, which means that the incidence of sightings is also periodic, right?
Yes, but not necessarily the same sighting. In one period when these things are coexisting, or what would we call occurring? What a simple term. I've got to keep it simple sometimes.
Concurrent, yeah.
Concurrent, when they're harmonizing. They're sine waves, they're harmonies. Yes. For a period we have Bigfoot, you know, in many cases, standing there. interesting observation with Bigfoot, which no one in the American media had ever bothered to print. And I've got every book on Bigfoot you can find, because I buy the books I use as resources. I like to have them. I've got a 2-story library in the barn, which is the bane of my wife's life. But what are we going to do with them when you fall off the perch, you silly old bugger? I don't know what she's going to do with them. But I look at the obvious. I don't look at, as I said, micro detail. I said to somebody a couple of years ago, I said, you know, you Americans are amazing. You're so amazingly coy about things. It must be a Puritan background. He said, what was that, George? I said, one of the most common features of a Bigfoot sighting is the 2 young men, they were driving along through the woods one night. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and they need to go off and relieve themselves. What a wonderful euphemism. In Australia, we'd say they're going off for a leak or a piss, but you lot seem to like relieve themselves, which is a total different meaning here. And whilst they're relieving themselves in the scrub and probably chatting with each other at the same time, it's been a long trip, they might have had a couple of beers, why not? They're just people out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And they need to relieve themselves. And next second, hell erupts. There is something screaming, yelling, shrieking, whistling, sometimes throwing things, breaking tree branches. It really is going apeshit, to use a term. Nobody ever bothers to mention that. This is typical anthropoid ape behavior. You go piss in a troop of monkeys or apes, they are going to scream, yell, jump, and carry on because you're marking their territory as yours. You are the interloper.
So that's why Bigfoot was doing it, so to
That's
say.
why Bigfoot was doing it, because who the heck are you? I live here. This is my forest, plain, steppe, desert, whatever. I've marked this out already. Can't you smell me? Yes, we can smell you. We just can't work out that this was you identifying yourself. So I just stopped for a leak. But I thought, no one ever bothered to notice that or write about it. And to me, it's as obvious as the rear end of a dog.
Now
So
you
there's a
said
little bit
it,
of primatology going on.
Yes, it's normal
your
primatology. It's primatology 101. And the other thing is, Randy and Betty Sue, they're in Virginia. They're going for a wee drive. It's not to get ready for their ASATs or anything. They're in the scrub or the bush or the forest or the wood, and they're in a car and they're courting. Oh, what a lovely euphemism again. We have a different term for it here, but this is a family show.
Yeah.
They're courting. Pheromones are excited. It's young love. And next second, they have a visitor with big eyes looking through the window. And Holy Mother of God, that certainly puts the kibosh in the relationship. Bigfoot's appeared again. You watch a couple of apes in a zoo or in the wild. 2 of them started, everyone watches. Some join in. You look at bonobos, the most peaceful ape on earth.
Yeah.
Unlike chimps, they aren't cannibalistic, they don't have raiding parties, and they don't kill each other. How the hell do bonobos and chimps end up being so different?
Orgies.
They're totally different power structures and totally different control of sex. One uses sex as a reward punishment. The other one says anyone can do it. We don't care. We don't know what age you are or whatever. We're just bonobos. They don't raid anything. Once again, it's simian behavior. And that explains a lot of Bigfoot sightings. And I say a lot of Bigfoot sightings. I'm not denying or decrying the Native American views of Bigfoot as being transdimensional, of Bigfoot appearing from the sky and coming down or wandering around, how Bigfoot occurs and exists. That's pretty well accepted theory these days as well. So we've got one here that lives in the woods, one here that looks like the one that lives in the woods, but doesn't come from there. He sort of travels through different thresholds. like the Wendigo and other creatures. Thresholds between dimensions. I got nothing against that either. These are dimensional openings. All of these are where different dimensions open to allow new matter, new entities to arise or be observed. And the wording is important. And then from the 1950s onward, October 15th, I think, 1954, in France, we meet another Bigfoot in France. This little fella, 4.5 foot tall.
So it's a baby.
And he's hairy with big eyes. And we meet him quite a few times in France. Wandering around the remote alleyways and lanes of rural France, along with one of the biggest UFO flaps in history, which Amy Michel documented so well. France was going through UFO bedlam. A great wave that was travelling from west to east, west to east basically, though with a bit of a move towards the southeast. Oddly enough, the same as the 1897 airship flap, which started off in Oregon, British Columbia, Oregon, Washington, headed through California, then started going southeast, through Texas, through the Midwest states, through Illinois, and then started petering out by mid-1897. And I've got hundreds of strange things from the 1897 airship flap. I could write a book on its own, but others have. I just included in books of my own. So you can say, did we have one at my town? Holy Christ, we did. But back to the apes, back to Bigfoot, or in this case, back to Chewbacca, many years before the book was written, many years before the movie in 1975 was released. In the late 60s, he makes another appearance in Pennsylvania, in Connecticut. We suddenly have all these reports occurring of UFOs. Oh, yeah, sure, we get them all the time. Who cares? You know, it's down there. The door opens, and it is an Orthon from Venus with the long blonde hair, bringing you wonderful predictions of the future that usually don't happen. It isn't a grey. It's a big ape. What should we say? It's a Bigfoot. High-domed head. He's come out. This upsets the narrative. But there were too many sightings and interactions with these large anthropoid creatures. And who's to say there aren't advanced anthropoid apes in the world or in the multiverse, because we're anthropoid apes. If we say they can't be us, then we can't be us. The same species. I know you're watching the clock.
No. I'm not watching the clock. I'm putting together. I'm trying to formulate what you've just divulged, which is that the Bigfoot sightings and the UFO sightings coincide.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bigfoot entities are either piloting these UFOs or somehow correlated to the UFO.
Or being let out for a leak. I don't know. Look, the Bigfoot's got to get out for a run. We'll just stop here for a while on Earth. He can have a bit of a run, wander around. We'll take him back home again. Yeah, we were picnicking through the multiverse. Which brings us to another thing. This antiquated concept that this thing has to travel 6.4 years at least from Alpha Centauri to here at light speed. Holy mother of God, what sort of economy is going to build that thing? And how many generations are going to die in it before it actually makes it to here to step out for 3 minutes and say, I'm here and I'm going to pick up some weeds and shit and some rocks and go. Excuse me. What sort of economy does that? An economy only does things if it gets a reward, either philosophical or religious or financial. Ask for pyramid builders. They weren't slaves, they were paid. They got the best beer in Egypt. And they built pyramids because it was a contract. They built it. Mm-hmm. And the economy liked it because it looked great. And it was great for the religious and political times. And the particular pharaoh that ordered their construction, if that be the case. And paid with beer.
Speaking of pyramids, sounds like you're building the foundation for dropping the big bomb, which is that the UFOs aren't coming from a distance. They're coming from nearby.
No. The UFOs, via these shifting wormholes or oscillations, come from the tip of my finger. So I used to say, at the end of my finger, you go 1 inch and you got heaven or hell. You've got other dimensions all around us. Why the hell would you want to travel through space, such an antiquated concept, over such hideous periods of time, when you both would remember a thing called the Möbius strip?
Sure.
The infinity symbol. You make one out of paper. You fold it on itself and you write a line on it. You realize you got a one-dimensional object because the line's on both sides, but it's the same side.
Yeah.
You've already warped space. What if we, instead of going from this end of the Möbius strip to this end, or at the middle, go straight through? Here, bang you're here, bang you're not there. And this brings up another concept somebody argued with me recently. They even brought in the Bing, that stupid particle, the Higgs boson particle. And I said I wasn't even talking about the stupid Higgs boson particle. I was talking about a different thing. Okay. There are 5 states of matter. Am I getting confused or a little too demented? Solids. Atomic structure, very slow.
Yep.
Atomic structure, very slow. Electrons, quarks, particles, everything, very slow. As we speed up, oddly enough, time speeds up. Because when they're not moving, there is no time. Because without the passage of something, no time can be recorded. We speed up, we hit liquid. It's oscillating a bit better. It flows, it moves, and unfortunately, in the case of water, it has 2 boiling points, but we try to ignore that. It has one at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, where it becomes vapor from ice being created, which is still a boiling point. Because it's condensing.
Sublimation, right?
Yeah. And then at 100 degrees Celsius, the secondary boiling point, the more traditional one. Okay, so we got liquids. Here, liquids, here, bubble, 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 bubble. Then we got gas. These babies are really moving fast. We know, we breathe them. We try and breathe liquids. It's a little difficult. It doesn't last long. We do it every now and again accidentally. It's not good. So that's good. 3 stages of matter with 4 fingers up. Stupid old fool. Yeah, my body does what it wants to at times. It's that age. Where's this going? There are only 3 states of matter. No. There's a 4th. The plasma field.
Plasma, yeah.
Plasma. Where those little atoms are really getting the shit stirred out of them. They are exploding. They are going everywhere because electromagnetic bonding in the nucleus is being broken. This thing is no longer a fixed piece of matter anymore. It's freeform. Usually at extremely high temperatures, like the center of a nuclear explosion.
Or the sun.
But the sun, stars, or a cold plasma explosion.
A cold plasma.
Cold plasma. Not so much heat. Still pretty nasty if you're in the middle of it. But not so much heat, but the same effect. The plasma is aggro, very agitated. The agitation continues until it hits what I believe, from my research, because it's the only explanation I can find. I don't like mysteries. I don't like questions. They annoy me. I like answers. I like logical hypotheses that explain things, even if it's to change the boundaries of reality, to do it at the boundaries of our understanding of reality. And then suddenly we go bang. 5th state of matter, the quasar vacuum, or somewhere where Schrödinger kept his cat. And it's more of an answer than that, because this is a state where the electromagnetic bond does not exist at all. There is no bond. This is pure energy. Everything is moving so fast. There is no mass. It is pure energy, ready to become mass again. Once it slows, it only has to slow one bit, it starts becoming matter again. That is the threshold between dimensions. That is where the oscillations here are occurring at a micro level so fast, the human brain can't comprehend what the hell is happening when it gets to that point or that time and space. When that is occurring or that window is opening, okay, we got a few mechanical things to sort out here, but so far that's the only scientific answer to the question, or scientific postulate or hypothesis we can allow for, where we can go through dimensions, and it doesn't include the Higgs boson particle. The human brain, or the observer, meets this point of time and space where things might be coming in and out, where things might be dropping in and out, or ejected in and out, for a limited time at a limited place, available for you for this fixed price. And not only that, you get 7 Bigfoots in the UFO. What? If a human observer and the human brain has a fail-safe mechanism in it, which says, I've got to get to understand what the hell is happening here at the moment because I cannot understand it. And I do this to stop myself going stark raving mad. So if I'm devoutly religious, I'm going to see the Virgin Mary standing in a tree.
Okay.
A safe symbol, a safe house.
Or
I'm going to see it in a cave.
Some kind of archetype.
And a grand architect. Oh, grand architecture, not necessarily a grand architect. I don't follow that theory either.
Archetype.
Archetype, yes.
Yeah.
They're rescued by an archetype in that case. And she's always in a cave or a tree. Why doesn't she stand on the ground? But I suppose it's a Marian thing.
Okay, yeah, sure.
The Marians believe in blue Virgin Marys who appear in caves or trees, and let's build a basilica. Okay, some peasant girl said to do it. Yeah, of course we will. Yeah, they build one. But strange things happened in that time initially. And yet, here nearby, all these people are seeing, they're driving along the highway, they're meeting Bigfoot because they went off the leak. Hang on. And in that same time period, somewhere over here is meeting our old mate, if you've read much on UFOlogy from the 40s and 50s and 60s, Orthon from Venus. Yay! He's wearing bright blue, he's got long blonde hair, he's telling us how we should live, what we should do, and what's going to happen. Of course, doesn't happen.
Wrong archetype.
Wrong archetype. But it was a convenient one at the time for somebody who was technically minded. The brain creates. And yet at the same time, and this is the interesting part of it, because of the free-floating matter, the free-floating electromagnetic state, freeform I should call it, like dance, but we don't want an interpretive one, that phenomena becomes manifest in your reality for a time, with its own resultant footprints, burn marks, adventures in your dimension. And then we get 2 questions. Is this intentional or unintentional on the state, on the part of a visitor? Or is it just this trying to defend itself? Or option 3, is this using your archetypes as camouflage for wandering around? Because who's going to believe you? Clem comes up from the woods and says, I just saw a Bigfoot down there, Pa. He was 9 foot tall, he had red eyes or green eyes, and he was chasing me. Yeah, sure. Yeah, go have another drink. Bye-bye, piss off. Or, this creature came down while we were meditating in our inner circle. And he filled me with so much love and peace and joy. And, you could hear Kumbaya echoing throughout the sweat lodge. And I was thinking, oh, my God. What's happening here? Am we going to go to the world and tell everyone about these people who came and visit us from Venus? Sorry, currently uninhabitable. Mars? Yes, not very inhabitable either. Moon? Oh, not much going on there. Even we left the place. Why did the Chinese like it? And on and on and on. And I don't know how people live on a gas giant like Jupiter. Maybe they're a Ganymede. What are the moons? God, it gets complicated. They can't come from the asteroid belt. Nothing big enough to have an atmospheric field. Maybe there are beings that are made of energy that come through dimensions, and we provide the clothing, the camouflage.
That would be.
So we got lots of theories.
It's something like a visual capsaicin, which is a chemical that transmits to your nervous system heat without actually being hot, right?
Mm.
And you're saying they're transmitting to our visual field, to our visual receptors,
Our reactionary field.
an image that they don't actually have.
Mm.
A form that they don't actually have. That's interesting. That's an interesting
Now,
proposition.
let me give you an observation. Ariel School. You've heard of Ariel School incident
No,
in Zimbabwe?
no, haven't heard of that one.
Oh, it's fun. Ariel School. Oh, another bloody Bigfoot. Oh. Here we are. Ariel School in Zimbabwe. Oh, good, I'm wearing my glasses. This happened in Rua, in Zimbabwe in 1994, when 62 children aged between 8 and 12 reported seeing a UFO and strange beings during their morning break. Okay, so it's a school of kids. We've had lots of reports of them. UFOs above schools, Colleton, Melbourne, 1956. Segeberg, Germany, 1887. School kids saw a big glowing thing in the sky floating around. Okay, so what's so different about this one? Shame you don't have a monitor near you to look up Ariel School
I'm
drawings.
looking at it right now. Oh, drawings?
Drawings. They asked for kids to draw what they saw.
Oh, okay. All right. Kyle,
Okay,
can we find those
62
up?
kids, normal kids, 8 to 12 years old. Kids draw what they see. That age, they're reasonably proficient drawers. There's a UFO. They've all had a UFO with one window, two windows, or three windows. 2 legs, 3 legs, 4 legs. Different shapes, different colours, different sizes. Hello. Welcome to Ariel. They're all different. Each observer is observing this reality based on their own objective visualization and then recording it and edited it years later to see if it's the same. Yeah.
That's the problem with
Well,
the human
retest.
brain, though. As it keeps thinking about it and it keeps going over it, it starts to warp
Yes.
what they've seen.
That's why in the beginning of this conversation I stated the problem with an intellect is it keeps focusing and focusing and focusing to the detriment of everything around it. It's addiction. It needs to get to the end of the challenge you've given it. Instead of doing an overview. Look at these beautiful drawings. These kids weren't hallucinating. They recorded it. It was newsworthy. They saw it. How else are we going to explain this stuff? That, something just came down out of the sky and a few beings got out, went for a walk, looked around. They'd come from, 4 billion light years away in a fuel-propelled craft. That's right, you got to fuel them to propel them. They don't run on their own. There's no such thing as free energy or perpetual motion. There never will be because it'll exhaust itself in the end. And they came here to Earth to wander around for 5 minutes, then go. Excuse me? Am I missing something?
That's what I always wonder, too. How do they, once they get here, how do they refuel to go home?
Who says they leave?
They might carry enough. I mean, if I go on a big trip, I try and fill up as much as I can. But do
I
they
didn't
leave?
assume there's very many gas stations on the way between their planet and ours.
Yeah, there was a Texaco one, but they couldn't get any fuel. It was too dear. It was 4,000 light year credits just to fill your tank. So we're not going to worry about that one.
But if they
Yeah.
use those, like that sheet you have with all those pinpoints of those,
The
Is it-
multiverse.
that's why they don't need.
They don't need it. That's why you
They
get
don't need
every
it.
size, shape, colour, and type of UFO seen. Think of the 1897 airship flap. I'm sure you both read on it. It's famous. Where hundreds of airships were seen starting in California, Oregon, Washington State, British Columbia in November 1896. And these big blimp-like things appeared. Sometimes with propellers on each end, sometimes with propellers underneath or on top. They were making strange noises, they were appearing, they were lit up. People heard voices from them and singing of angels. And sometimes they dropped potatoes. Excuse me.
What?
And other things. These
So-
reports, newspaper reports from that period. And it continued right through the Midwest and finished off in Texas, where we had one of them crashing in a little town called Aurora. The local legends of Aurora are the little fella that hit Judge Proctor's windmill in his ship. We buried him here because he still deserved a Christian burial. Okay, so every newspaper in the United States for a year was making stories up because it was a slow news week. Of course, I'm glad there was a rational explanation for this.
That's a pretty poor explanation.
A shit poor explanation. So what the hell were they seeing? A lot of these phenomenal events, especially the techno ones, are always one step ahead of where the current imagination lies. They are what we perceive a reality might be. In the 30s, we have ghost rockets all over Europe. That continued into the late 40s. Apart from the Germans, who were building them, or some of them, these other ones were beyond our capability. They were ahead, again, of the technology of the day. By 47, with the Arnold sighting, and I've got pages of data for that month alone, actually 75th anniversary in July of Roswell, which is the same period of sightings. I'll do a very large series of podcasts on it because that's how much data is from that period of 2 months. It's amazing what people saw and the multiple different apparent or alleged impact events in that period, not just at Roswell. Was the media deciding to lie at once? Doing another 1897? Look, it's a slow news day in Roswell today. They hit the New York Times. They hit the international media. Nothing to see here, folks.
They just threw a dart at the wall with cue cards on it. One said UFO, and the other said crash.
Or
And then
Bigfoot, or
Roswell. Yeah.
yes. And if all else fails, lobster taken out of restaurant in Maine and taken back to the ocean. If it's a really slow news day, good luck to the lobster. I like those stories. That really shows how nice humans actually are.
Largest pearl found in clam at restaurant.
Yes, that's it. Life really is absurd. It really is amazing. You got to laugh your way through a lot of it because you don't want to stop laughing.
That's pretty serious. Pretty deep right there. It's going pretty
I'm not a very deep person. I'm not an intellectual.
Well,
I got
okay.
one more question.
I hate
about
to
your
see. I hate
paper,
to see
though.
what you think an intellectual talks like.
Right.
I usually think they're wankers, but that's just me. Once again, their intellect is focusing again into that little idiom or archetype or whatever they're chasing to try and prove or manifest or whatever they're doing. Like the initial example of the two experts studying the variation of fish hooks on Mauna Loa. Why?
Yeah.
At least I wrote 81
good
books on a
tenure.
multitude of subjects.
You
to
said
keep
it earlier.
tenure.
They just want tenure. then they can just sit in their comfortable,
They
cushy
can
job.
coast.
And leave all the work to the student, to the associate professors who actually run the tutorials. And they're trying to crawl up the backsides of these ones
So
by
that they can
publishing
get tenure.
similar, so they can get tenure. And then everybody wins. The hegemonic conspiracy continues. I wrote a wee book a little while ago. Where are we? None of my books are really wee books. Where are you? Ah, there you are. When the sky crashed down. That's Lake Taupo in New Zealand. I photographed it a few years ago. It's a simple little book, only 718 pages. It took me a few months to create. Remember, all of these books have been written since 2012.
You've written 80 books in 10 years.
Yes.
No wonder why you're
At one
taking a
stage,
break.
I was publishing one a fortnight, and I still work a full-time job with a 4-hour commute.
When did you sleep?
Yeah, when do you
At
sleep?
night, after making dinner and doing some editing.
That's incredible.
But that's the advantage of this stupid thing. I released this, the linking of climate change to meteoric and cometary bombardments throughout all of Earth's history. This is full of every impact event that's ever occurred that leaves a crater more than 1 kilometre wide, which means it's a bloody destructive crater.
Right.
So, like
And
the
it-
one here in Flagstaff,
Yeah,
because we live in Arizona. It's like,
and it was so close to the visitor centres too. That was so lucky.
I know. I mean, they did it just right.
It just fell next to the visitor centre. They were so
It's the
lucky at
parking lot,
Flagstaff.
everything, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, what if it had hit it? What if it had hit it? And then
There'd be no visitor
Flagstaff.
center,
Yeah, I know. Well, what's the point of it then?
right?
That can
No
be
one would know
observed.
to go.
So we got 718 pages of UFOs. Oh, sorry. Cometary impacts in chronological order, of course. So you can go to a particular year and find what happened then, or a particular period, such as 3,260 million years ago, third largest impact crater on Earth, third oldest, one of the largest, Barbson impact crater in South Africa. A big crater, 60 k's across, 60 kilometres across, which meant a global extinction event, we believe. Funny thing though, I was looking for something to flesh it out because you don't want to just read a list of impacts. You know, it's this size that occurred now, and I'm terribly sorry I fell asleep during this. It's like reading somebody saw a Bigfoot down in Happy Glen Valley on April 4th, 1942. It was 8 foot tall. In 1843, nearby at such and such, at a snooper's dog on those or whatever.
Right. People
Somebody
don't
saw
want
a
data
big-
points. They want a picture painted.
They want both. They want both. So I was looking at Barberton, and they were a totally unrelated article. Unrelated. The oldest fossil bacteria or forms of life on our Earth are found at Barberton. They date to 3,260 million years BC. Bingo. Our little friends arrived in our celestial traveller. Because you know what's so good about a comet? It's made of mud and dirt
Yeah.
and crap. It's like a bit like a celestial Hoover gathering shit as it goes around the multiverse.
Yep.
As its mass gets larger. But inside it's relatively cool. And it's shielded from cosmic radiation. So bacteria, God bless their little souls, can travel in them.
So it's like a cosmic
Everywhere.
turd.
A cosmic turd. Yes, that's what they are.
It's like
Cosmic
it could have
turds.
been gut bacteria from some cosmic being, right?
Yes, some come from other star systems. Most come from the Oort cloud outside of Pluto. Actually, I did discover a trans-Plutonian planet a few years ago, but it's another story. And that was to do with these, would you believe? Anyway, we might have to do another interview one day if you can stand it.
I can't wait.
So
I'm bummed that this one's actually going to end.
we have panspermia. Well, look, as I said earlier, some of mine last up to 3 hours. It's because people keep asking me questions. I just can't shut me up. It could be both. So, once again, the origin of life on Earth, it's in one of my books. I went to the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Commission, television for the people of Australia and culture. And I said, I just found a strong possibility, theoretical possibility, that life was seeded on Earth at Barberton in South Africa in the famous Green Belt. I got 700 pages of different proofs and things for it and related events in relation to cometary and meteor bombardments that began and ended ice age and cryogenic periods on Earth. And the response was, have you had it peer reviewed? I said, I don't have any peers. Well, you're a maverick scientist then. I said, I have been called a maverick scientist. They said, well, we can't publicize your work because you're not a peer-reviewed, recognized scientist. And I said, that's effing ridiculous. The greatest scientists we've ever had were all maverick scientists. Look at Rutherford. Look at one of my heroes who I can't remember. Not Corliss, one of my favorite authors, but no, German guy, Alexander von Humboldt. Look at the great scientists of the past. They were all mavericks. And yet you can't be having me on your pissy program, which is Australia-wide, because I'm not peer-reviewed. So I basically told him to get effed, and that's the last time we ever spoke. I'm not going to waste my time with it.
I don't blame you.
That was the first time anyone had ever bothered to put an actual cometary impact on Earth in relationship to the first bacterial evidence. As I said, this thing is crazy.
You're bringing that up because I feel like it was either last week or maybe this week where they're talking about how they found amino acids or even nucleic acids on asteroids and comets. And
yeah, well, the most famous is a Murchison meteorite found in Victoria. I think it's 1964. My memory is not as good as it used to be. It used to be eidetic, but I think it just gets worn. What is my wife says is there's too much in there to sort.
That's what I was going to say. There's just too much in there.
Yeah, so occasionally I have to do this weird retrieval system with my fingers, as you've probably noticed. It's sort of, Christ,
flipping through your Rolodex.
I'm flipping through my Rolodex, trying to find it. What we've been discussing is pretty amazing stuff. Like, to go planetary again. This, whichever way you look at it.
So is there so many dots there because they don't use the same point every time? It's not 100%, so they kind of...
It's a sine wave. Sine waves move. They can't stay static. A sine wave is a harmonic. It's always moving.
Yeah.
So you got other ones, bigger ones and smaller ones. And out of this data, of my database that I spent, 50 years building, 40 years, even that, by 1992, a program that used to exist called Beyond 2000. One of their researchers got me in touch with a physicist in Wollongong. He won the Pasteur Prize for Physics. He's a brilliant physicist. He's a maverick scientist as well. So he manages to wear two hats. And I wanted to answer a question. Is this data, because I drew all these graphs, this is the only one left. I burnt the rest of them because I had the shits with it. Somehow this one escaped because I couldn't get an answer out of any of it. All I can see were these sine waves. Sine waves, mathematical proofs. Still can't verify the goddamn things. So she got me in touch with him. I spent weeks driving down every Tuesday night to Wollongong in my wife's car, spend all night entering data into the great computer of the time. This is 1992, so you can imagine. I think my phone's got more memory and power. Of course it has. It's amazing. My old phones were probably better. I love phones. They're amazing. It's all the universe is there.
I know, it's awesome.
And that's wonderful. And I went down and entered and entered and entered and entered and entered. Excuse me, it's not that I'm disorganized.
It looks better than my desk. I can't even show my desk on the screen.
We found he did a reverse exponential curve on the data period from 1800 to 1977 as a test sample, only several tens of thousands of data points. As I said, all from triple independent sources or triple published sources or with trace evident phenomena. I told you I'm fussy. And look.
Bell curve.
Yes, a 550-year bell curve came out of the data.
That's incredible.
The data's not random. And then it got weirder. Look. Smaller series of bell curves.
Yep.
Smaller and smaller and smaller.
Aftershocks.
No, different part, different sine waves. And guess what? They're all part. Here's some. Oh, God.
Here it comes.
What a mess.
Here it comes. Buckle up, Kyle. It's coming.
I'm waiting. I'm loving it.
They're not. They're pretty faint, actually. Look at these little fellas. Or females, or whatever they're meant to be called these days. The length of the curves is roughly similar to the orbital periods of the major planets.
Of course. Of course they are.
Because we have magnetos with liquid cores constantly circling us or ellipsing around us. We have to be influenced by the electromagnetic patterns they produce. All these things are transformers or generators. Just whirling around, whirl. So liquid core, outer sheath, creating an electromagnetic field.
Right.
It's pretty simple. So we found one at 550, and that period is an astronomical unit. An astronomical unit is the distance from the Earth to the Sun.
Right.
That indicates there's something whirling around the solar system past Pluto with an elliptical orbit of 550 astronomical units or years.
Yeah.
We discovered a trans-Plutonian planet. We called it Persephone or Proserpine. And talking of synchronicity, 3 months later at Siding Springs, I don't know if you've heard of it, one of the world's foremost astronomical observatories in Australia and New South Wales. Lovely spot. Magnificent geology, the Warrumbungle Ranges. Amazing. You'll really have to Google it. It's on top of one of the mountains in the Warrumbungles. They discovered a trans-Plutonian planet. Yay! With an astronomical error. 3 months later, an astronomical error of only 100 astronomical units. We put the planetoid, whatever you want to call it, at 550. And with that 550, it and Pluto's ellipse and Neptune's ellipse, the different relationships of them, because of this trans-Plutonian planet, verified why Uranus goes inside Neptune's orbit on a periodic basis, because of the magnetic and gravitational field from Persephone or Proserpine. Remember, these are ellipses.
Right.
They intersect with each other.
Yeah.
But the smallest we could get to is a Jupiter cycle, because we're using a computer in 1992, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing to scream about.
They couldn't get through the static.
Yeah.
Did you also find a non-planar orbit as well? That's like the latest science on the so-called 9th or 10th planet, however you're counting Pluto, was that it was running not necessarily a perpendicular, but an askew orbit around the sun in a way that's affecting Pluto and Neptune.
Well, basically, we're all non-planar. If we believe in a planar theory, they're all in the same line, and that doesn't exist.
So
we're all moving everywhere, going through each other's. As I said, Neptune goes through Uranus's orbit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the period of that. I'm not an astronomer. I did bring up data and say, let's find the patterns.
Right.
Patterns are real. A mathematical pattern is not a postulate. It is a mathematical result of an equation. You can't change it. It's not.
Fact.
It's a fact, as far as facts can go, because it's not like science where it's a postulate or a fact until the next hypothesis comes along and knocks it off its perch.
Right.
And people hate that concept. They hate that. You just have to look at phlogiston, Phlogiston, up until Lavoisier brought up the concept of oxygen in the 18th century. Phlogiston answered mineralogical and metallurgical questions far better than oxygen did. But Lavoisier did the publishing from France. Phlogiston was knocked off its perch. Oxygen took over. Most would say we believe in oxygen. No, it's a hypothesis. Until the next hypothesis knocks it off its perch. That's called science. It's still a theoretical business.
Yeah.
No matter how we look at it. So I don't mind throwing my quasar vacuum in the mix. It's not my idea. But it was the best definition I could find, or best answer to that problem. Because if we're accelerating subatomic particles, they've got to go somewhere. They don't just, boys, we haven't got a theoretical position for this yet, so we'll just stop it. Excuse me? As I said, I'm not a very bright person.
Yeah.
And I said, I look at obvious things.
Yeah, you're like digging down deep into the quantum realm, and those really small particles. I think the current theory is they just blip in and out of existence.
Yeah, through the quasar vacuum to the next dimensions. A lot of people find it hard to take in one of my interviews in one lot, but some people come back for them quite often. I had a lovely story about a Bigfoot I was going to read.
we went all the way around. Yeah, we've been,
because that is what my research is. This is what my research is.
We've been up and down the ladder.
Oh, in and out of the ladder. Sometimes the ladder's 20 miles away and we're still going past it.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time it's here.
Yeah.
Loving it.
Thank you.
George,
I would love.
This has been a great just tip of the iceberg.
Oh, we didn't even scratch the surface.
That we created new surfaces.
Yes.
At least 4, if not 19.
I would love to continue this conversation.
But you've only got limited time.
I do have limited time.
Okay.
We would love to have you back to continue the conversation. Pick up where we left off, if that's even possible. I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of new data coming in and we would love to hear your stories also.
Even reiterating these old data next time will be totally different.
Yeah.
Because you can only absorb so much of it.
I'm excited already. Yes.
Now you know why the kids in the schoolyard thought I was a little weird when I just sat there reading all day. Pissed me off because no one would share my excitement for things. So I just retreated further into my books.
That's why I was glad I found Sam.
Who's Sam?
George, I want to share a quick story with you before we shut down, which is I went to a comic book convention. It was the first time I'd ever gone to one. And there was also a Phoenix Astrological Society there with telescopes pointed at Saturn, pointed at Jupiter. And I spoke to the gentleman who was there, and he's a gentleman like you who has just so much knowledge at his fingertips. And he's talking about numerology theory, and he tells me, if we could just get to an asteroid and bring back 1% of the trillion tons, and then I spouted off what 1% of a trillion tons was, and he goes, are you a math guy? Are you a math guy? And I was like, yeah, I studied math in my undergraduate, in my bachelor's program, and I have a bachelor's in math. And so he starts running by me all of this numerology theory and how he's trying to bring down prime factorization to what he called a bit problem. Right now it's a byte or a kilobyte problem. He's trying to bring it down to a bit problem. And I said, well, if you could do that, then you could unlock all of the credit card information in New York City in a matter of minutes. And he says, yes. And I said, I can't talk to you anymore. You're gonna get me investigated by the feds. And we gotta call this conversation today.
Interestingly enough, yes, sorry.
I don't know as much as you do, clearly. But I know enough to recognize when there's a dangerous intellect in the room. And I think, sir, you are a dangerous intellect. I'm loving it. I'm on the edge of my seat right now.
You can also predict earthquakes with this theory, with this postulate. Because once again, electromagnetic fields have effect on the Earth's crust. I offered it to a major insurance company in Australia. They weren't interested because I'm just a maverick scientist.
Yeah.
Shame. Who wants to place the book on the Great Tokyo earthquake of, we're not having insurance for you today? Whoops. Because you're about to be leveled. But all we're still talking about is electromagnetism and mathematics. And I'm not a mathematician. Sam's a mathematician.
No.
I'm a theoretician. But what I would like is somebody to design a computer program where we could actually see that. I was still struggling going through Word and Excel trying to find a graph that will do this. And so far, I might have something, but I'm finishing this 7,000-page database first. After I finish this book explaining the theories I've just explained to you that I've never written about, which is amazing when you look at the voluminous amount of work I've written. And I'm fussy with my research, as you know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to be stuffed around. But I'm just still a big pussycat.
Well, George, with that, we will continue this conversation in our next go-round. I can't wait, honestly.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
And we'll make sure it's not early morning for you next time.
Yeah, maybe
it would be better if it...
We'll be early morning, and you can be at lunchtime.
Yes.
Well, are you East Coast, West Coast, or where
West
Coast?
Coast. We're
West Coast.
You're West Coast. Well, why don't you go to Pacific Standard Time? You're 6 p.m. normally. Well, in Vancouver, when I get interviewed from there, it's only midday here.
We would love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I prefer it to now. I mean, it's my effing birthday, and I'm up at 4 o'clock. I normally sleep in for 6.
Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us on your birthday.
Thank you for taking the time with us. It has been an absolute treat for me. Kyle, I'm sure you agree.
I need a web link for my Facebook pages.
Yeah.
If you could send that to me after you've finished processing this.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved it.
This was so much fun.
Absolutely.
It's meant to be fun. Life is meant to be absurd. That's where you see things.
Yes.
With that, we will see you next time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.
And we're getting bigger edges every